What's fun about ADD is that a lot of times you might buy something, forget you bought it, and so you buy it again. And there's nothing in either one of those books. I thought I'd try something random and draw. So I said, you know what, I'll draw a donkey. I don't know why I thought donkey. I just said, I think I'll draw a donkey. And so that's what I picked. And why I'm showing you this is because I think it's fun sometimes when we get outside of our brain and try something we don't know how to do. I haven't drawn in so long, and usually when I draw something completely safe. So right now, as I'm doing this, I'm not even looking at the lines exactly. I'm kind of looking at the donkey and saying, what does a donkey have to be a donkey? And I already start messing it up. But that's the fun of it. Like I'm not going to art school. I'm not going to see if I can get this thing thrown into the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum or whatever it is. I was just like, I wonder if I could draw a donkey. And in the process, I start trying to copy the lines of the picture I'm looking at, which is funny. Kind of the picture that you see on the video is not the one I'm looking at. It's off screen right now, so it's the one I showed you in the last little bit. But I'm trying to draw this donkey that's down eating some grass. And so I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of interesting. And the thing I keep doing is going, oh, that's interesting. His tail's kind of like Eeyore's tail. And I'm like, well, that I guess sort of makes sense. And then I go, oh, that's interesting. His ears are kind of like a rabbit. Oh, that makes sense too. But as you look at this drawing, what you see me doing is trying to rationalize and think about and like, oh, well, this is the shape I think I see when I'm looking at this picture. Again, it's not the picture you see on the screen. It's the one from before, but we'll get back to that. So as I'm trying to do this, I'm doing a real lot of interpretation and not as much observation. That's the story, right? Interpretation versus observation. And I'm like, oh, well, this is what I see here. I see that white line. That's a thing. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to better understand what I need to do. But in the process, I start catching on to some things. I start seeing kind of what makes a donkey a donkey. And as I'm making my mistakes, I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. That's also interesting. What do you know? And then I start asking myself questions. Now, I haven't gone and looked anything up about a donkey, but it's interesting that it got me asking questions. Like I was like, why do their ears do it that way? Like what makes them different than a horse in that way? Horses' ears can do a lot of different things, but donkeys' ones are perched differently. You know, obviously they're sort of in nearby families, but they're not the same creature, obviously. So I'm like, what's the differences? And as I'm doing that and thinking about that while I'm drawing, I'm like, that's not going to help me draw this donkey any better or any worse. Like, kind of effed this thing up. So then I'm like, well, this is what you get. This is my donkey. The things I started to notice, though, were like the snout is kind of interesting. The ears are interesting. So here I am redrawing it. I'm like, that snout is almost like a nacho or something. It's sort of like a rounded corners Dorito. And then the little hair is almost like zebra hair, which is different than a horse's mane. That's interesting. Is it closer to a zebra? But then I'm like, what do I do about that nacho? And I F it up. And again, I'm drawing in pen. You know why I'm drawing in pen? Because it doesn't matter. Look at the eyeball. Little squinty eyeball. The other thing I noticed is that I drew the nostril on the other donkey, the bigger donkey. I drew it wrong. And I was like, So as I start doing this, I start thinking, I start trying to get to it, and I notice that also the donkey has that sly eyeball. It makes me laugh. And I start thinking, this is hilarious. What a fun way to use a little moment of time instead of anything to do with work, anything else. What a fun way to sort of, I don't know, meditate. Meditate on a donkey. By the way, my donkey's name, I'm particularly pleased by this. I named him Odie. Donkey Odie.